I had read a book called Journey to the West, which is a 400-year-old Chinese novel.
Welcome to Slave Ship 909.
It's been adapted into lots of different mediums. There was a TV show in the UK which was massive. Damon Albarn just did an opera. So it's always had this kind of undercurrent of coolness about it.
Remaining journey time is estimated at 16 hours.
Tamim and I talked about the possibility of doing a game which is driven by two characters, and it's quite a big and quite an ambitious thing to do, to actually want to invest in an emotionally complex journey just between two characters.
Free from the random hazards of the wild. Safety and sustenance.
As soon as the project started, I grabbed a copy of Journey to the West and we sat down, read through it, and just kind of looked at what elements we could use.
So we took that book and based it in a post-apocalyptic North America. Replaced all the magic of the old book with technology and the demons with military droids.
There are going to be many games in the future, in the next 5 to 10 years, I think, which, as I say, they'll stop just being classified as games. They'll stop being, and films will stop being classified as films, and they will be events.
No matter how hard we've been trying to make stories work, they're at the level of B movies compared to the best movies. So we wanted to kind of attempt to bridge that gap.
So it was an immense challenge, but we had a terrific writer, Alex Garland, who came on board.
He's done some great books and films, The Beach, 28 Days Later.
We actually sat down with Alex through a series of workshops. So we got the main story arc going, we decided what locations we were going to use.
We would work through the story and the level designs together.
Strung together this road trip, effectively.
When I originally agreed to do this project, it was actually to come on board as a director, and then some way down the line, I was looking at some artwork and saw the original drawings for Monkey and thought, actually, that would be quite a cool character to play.
The other character is Trip, and she grew up in a community that her father set up.
I absolutely see some of myself in Trip. I mean, it's certainly in a different medium, but I still really am her.
So the journey actually begins with both Monkey and Trip captured on a slave ship.
Trip escapes at the beginning.
In the process of escaping, she actually shorts the whole system and causes it to crash. Monkey survives because he's so strong, so he punches and fights his way through. After the ship crashes, they both end up in New York.
So she spots her main chance, who is this big brute.
While Monkey's unconscious, Trip sticks this slave headband, which is used to control slaves, onto his head.
You put this on me.
Let me explain.
Get this thing off, or I'm gonna rip your head off.
And he has to obey her orders, or else she causes him an immense amount of physical pain.
Stop!
She does this because she knows that the city is teeming with inactive mechs.
What she wants him to do is to take her back to her community, which she's been plucked out of.
She's not doing it because she hates him. She's doing it because she has to.
I die. You die.
Oh.
And so they start this uneasy journey together.
Get out!
She's the brains, if you like, and you're the brawn, and together you can defeat pretty much anything you come across. Beginning of the project, we had this core idea of adapting Journey to the West and giving it our own visual style.
We've tried to really give it something different, a different twist.
When we decided that this would be based 150 years in the future in a post-apocalyptic world, we were very well aware that it's a trope. It can be a cliche.
We actually saw a program called Life After People. And they showed what would happen to these major cities in the future when people are gone.
Within a few hundred years, the world basically becomes unrecognizable.
So we decided, let's start in New York and make it a journey actually across the US.
We didn't want to be depressing about it. Like a lot of post-apocalyptic movies are depressing and games. We wanted to kind of make a fantasy that was like Miyazaki movies, where everything's different and everything's colourful, and it's just a window into a totally different fantasy world.
We thought New York would be a good place to ground it. If nature is reclaiming, then you need something to be almost aware of.
Our style in terms of art is also very colourful, so we always want to put colour into all our games, and we want to add post-processing effects that you would normally see in movies to kind of make the image just feel alive.
We could push the colors a lot because the robots got rust, which can be orange, can be red.
Skyscraper that's kind of got ivy completely all over it, or with a bed of poppies that are giving off all these shafts of red light.
You can see evacuation notices in New York, you can see chemical warfare, biohazard symbols.
Very often you see something that looks like a tree, but actually it's not a tree because it's maybe a piece of robot. The idea of monkeys is come from the legend of Monkey, the Journey to the West, you know, the book. The original one has got a specific mask paint. I try to keep that.
Some people won't be aware of some of the subtleties that we've got in, but there's obviously the staff and Monkey's cloud.
So the cloud is actually part of Monkey's character. Even if you look back at hundreds of year-old images of him, he's on his cloud with his staff, with his headband.
This character is still really big, but more an animal. So you can see in the animation, especially when you jump one building to another, it really look like kind of Tarzan, like in the jungle, you know, like really like a monkey.
The other character is Trip.
Little by little, her personality, fragile, you know, personality come out, and you feel more attached to her.
The third main character in the game is Pigsy.
He's got like pin-up tattoos everywhere. He's got girls, thinking about girls all the time.
Trip? Is that you?
Pigsy!
You don't have to have any interest in the book or the TV series or anything to appreciate the game. It's just a good story with good characters and a rich world. We, as a studio, we always use performance capture in all our games. It's a technique that we pioneered in games with our last game.
So on Enslaved, we're working with House of Moves to do the performance capture.
This is my first mocap experience. Yeah, it's awesome.
I did work with Andy on his last project. We've both got a kind of background in physical theatre, which is the kind of theatre where you don't have many props and the actors try and create everything in the imagination of the audience.
Performance capture really needs to be clarified. It needs to be explained to people. It's becoming a huge part of the industry.
What it involves is bringing actors into a studio, motion capture studio, where we mark them up all on their body and on their faces. They have mics on their heads as well, and they basically perform totally naturally, just like any other actor would in a movie or in a TV show.
Okay, I need a few minutes to get this open. You keep watch, make sure no one sees us. We had 3 days of rehearsal before we started any kind of actual capturing, where Tamim and Andy and I got to sit down and really plot out from the beginning each scene.
Monkey!
Yeah.
We got one problem.
Yeah, what's that?
It's a license to have fun, to create as part of an ensemble. Admittedly, you know, quite a small ensemble, but you know that you're creating an imaginary event.
Are they mechs? So these are mechs, not slaves that are coming to attack.
Yeah, the mech.
We're reaching a point now where people are beginning to understand there's a necessity, there's a human need in having storytelling impact in gaming in a big way. I think Ninja Theory have been pioneers in that respect.
as an attitude towards recording VO, we like to use the on-set recorded stuff as much as possible. When they're capturing the motion capture, we capture the voice as well, because unlike in film you will often replace a large percentage of the dialogue after the film's been done. But in a game, with mocap, you know, it's a different actor, when I say a different actor, the character looks completely different. And the translation from the facial movement, it's never a perfect thing. So everything you can do to preserve the original performance, to make the original performance come through, is really, really key. And that sort of made us think about how we record the rest of the VO that isn't for the cutscenes.
You're really worried about Monkey damaging stuff because he's shooting stuff.
Okay, stand by. And we're rolling.
Looks like the first anchor point is down these tunnels. I need you with me, Monkey. Get up here.
Please.
Monkey, there's a route up. I've coded the dragon flag to lead the way. All you have to do is follow it.
Sure.
Usually in a VO session you've got an actor and they've got to be just here, and the microphone's just there, and they've got to direct their voice at the mic. They can't move about. We decided to use the same microphones that we used on set, but that also has a really nice effect of freeing the actors. So we had them all with head mics like they had in the mocap session, and that just means they're free to jump about, lie on the floor, roll around, and they did, you know, without thinking. They just do all of the things that the characters are doing in the game whilst they're delivering the lines, and it just gives so much life to the performance.
Whoa! Let me disable the security systems.
Yeah, sounds like we're gonna have a bit of mech action in here pretty soon.
Like, I think there's a lot of parallels between what an actor does and what an animator does. They just happen to use their face instead of the mouse and keyboard.
At the same time, there's people like me that are basically making sure that the technology and everything is all kind of working and going to be ready for them. All the cameras really care about is points in space, and that's all that we're retrieving from them. We're also capturing traditional video footage of them because we don't want to lose sense of, you know, their performance. So we want to do justice to it and record it like a conventional film, because that's how it's going to be edited together.
Are you and Trip? You know.
And me and Trip what?
You know, are you together?
Trip enslaved me. And if I don't do what she says, she causes me a lot of pain. And if I still don't do what she says, she kills me.
All right.
And if you do it right, it draws you totally in, and you totally believe that character's real.
I'm not the kind of guy to go muscling in.
Pigsy. She can hear every word we say.
Okay, thanks, everybody. That was great.
I think it went pretty well. I mean, and that was the highlight of my day. You know what I mean?
The way that Ninja Theory have reinvented the Legend of Monkey is kind of, for me, quite exciting in that it's using a lot of modern technology. It's set in a post-apocalyptic world. We're in Prague right now, and we've just come over here, just kind of working in Smečky's studios, which is a fantastic studio. It's actually my favourite sounding studio that I've worked in. There's a lot to get into, because you can get into emotions and you can get into action, and you can get into a lot of sadness and tragedy as well. So it's got all of those elements that you want as a composer to get very dramatic and very full on with orchestration. It kind of feels like there's a tribal language to it, which is still there. There's a lot of excitement, a lot of danger, a lot of threat, a lot of movement. Because of what's going on with Monkey, you have this sense of movement towards an inevitable conclusion. There's a sense of loss. He's lost a great deal, but he's a hardened soul. That's great.
Really good. I'm impressed, actually.
Excellent. That was very good.
All right.
Yeah.
How's it sounding?
I want to make sure that priorities 1, 2, 3 are okay and solid. I mean, you know, look, if we end up not doing everything, that's kind of accounted for. I mean, I talked to Tom. I think for me, you know, it's I really enjoy the way in which Monkey and Trip travel. I mean, they just have fantastic movement between them. It's very flowing, and I think it's trying to get that sense of constant flow and momentum into the music, which actually drives a lot of the orchestration as well, and the way in which I'm trying to make the music work, I suppose, to give you a sense that you constantly infuse with energy. You know, when you're playing the game, that it never lets up in terms of that energy, and I think that's what's exciting about it. It just stays, it just drives all the way through very strongly. With me, I work very closely with Tom Colvin, and we both have a sense of the narrative of the overall game, but we pretty much work to the storyline.
We're very used to looking at stuff and thinking, oh, that looks a bit wrong because of this, so, you know, we can be quite analytical and work out. But audio is very much more about the emotional, and we're not just talking about music. I mean, every element of audio is involved in pulling your emotions one way or another. The sound effects are probably the largest job for us in the sound department. Everything has to be made from the bottom up. Every leaf moving, every bird, every creature that you see in the background. To keep things fresh, we use a really great Foley artist. We work with them on Heavenly Sword, and again, we've got a really good working relationship with them. And they've had a lot of fun, you know, spending a day with lumps of metal and hitting them in different ways, and going to a fairground and recording all the pistons in the machines and stuff. They do all of that. I think the most important thing for us was for it to be visceral and exciting. Enslaved combat-wise. Every single time the staff connects with a robot, you really want to feel that connection. I mean, another thing was just getting under the skin of all the different robot characters. The Sea Dog, for example, I think we went through many different trial versions to get that sort of really nice, grinding, threatening sound as he's moving.
Every time we make a game at Ninja Theory, we try to think of the pillars of the game, the core of that experience. So on this particular project, Enslaved, we chose 3 main pillars, which were dramatic storytelling, cinematic action, and monkey and trip interaction.
Hey! Hey! Open the door! You mother...
It's quite interesting how we've had to try and make Trip useful for you in game mechanics.
When you start the game, the primary objective is just to get her through these mech-ridden scenarios.
Then when I ask you to do something, you need to do it immediately.
Okay.
But as you progress, she starts to come into her own.
You can give a limited amount of orders to Trip.
Hit the brakes.
Locking brakes now.
In particular situations, you can tell her to move.
This way!
If there's mechs with gunfire, you might not have any way to kind of take them out. So she can cause distractions.
They've activated!
She starts to scan the enemies that you've killed.
Another way she can help you through the game is to upgrade your weaponry.
She also catches a dragonfly, which is basically a CCTV camera that flies around the city.
I'll put a marker up on your headband display.
We're using her as the navigation method through the world to help you really find your way. And when we're looking at environment traversal, we really wanted to do something a little bit different to what's out there. So what we've done is create these windows of opportunity. So as you're swinging through the environment, if you hit it right, you get the right kind of combo, you can string these moves together. So you get a much more flowing experience.
Monkey's main weapon is his telescopic staff.
So the staff will extend and he'll be able to use it to attack at short range. Also, if he does a wide attack, it'll extend further and knock enemies back.
Shoot them with a plasma blast or a stun blast. As well as that, another toy he's got in his arsenal is his cloud, and you can navigate areas that you weren't able to navigate without it.
Trip is a very vulnerable character. She doesn't have any weapons. All she has is an EMP device which she can use to knock out mechs for a short amount of time and run away.
No combat area is there just on its own for no particular reason. Everything has a logical purpose for being there.
All of the gameplay is kind of funneled and directed to lead you up to these particular moments.
For example, in one particular scene, you have an exit on the other side of these rooftops. So in this scenario, you can play it two ways. You can either go around to the right and just brute force beat up these guys, or you can do a more sneaky way and use Monkey's kind of Tarzan-like clambering abilities to sneak up on him, jump down, take him out, rip off his gun. Now you've got his gun with a limited amount of ammo, and you can mow down all the other guys as they run and try and attack you.
Really, the whole game is a big, long puzzle about how do you get Trip from one part of the world to another.
So you think before you fight, and I think that's quite compelling.
Quite early settled on the idea of having robots as the enemies. First of all, we could do a lot more robot gore. We've also tried to make it a lot more tactical, so we've added things called takedowns. And these takedowns allow you to, let's say, rip off a gun mech's arm and then use that arm to shoot another mech, or turn one of the other mechs into a bomb.
The game had to be challenging, it had to be hard.
It becomes a totally different experience when you play on normal, and particularly when you play on hard. It really ramps up the challenge that you're going to face and how much you have to use tactics.
Was incredible! Has anyone ever killed one of these before?
Not that I know of.
Oh, you did it!
Yeah. The truth is, we did it.
At Ninja Theory, we always really pay particular attention to character, not just characters in the game, but also environments, the lighting, everything we try and give character to.
Character is really important because it's the thing that draws you into the game. If you connect with your character, then you're in that place, in that emotion.
Character is ultimately what makes us like or dislike a person. Journey to the West is an ancient Chinese story. It's incredibly popular.
Journey to the West is a story about two characters who not only go on a physical journey to the West, they are going on an emotional journey where they are discovering who they themselves are, and they change and grow over time.
And so when we wanted to adapt it, we took free rein in kind of mashing together lots of different elements of popular culture that we like.
The core idea of the game is really the interplay between Monkey and Trip. So we've got these two characters, Monkey, who's a strong, brutish character, and Trip, who's kind of weak, but she's very tech savvy. So she is stuck on this slave ship with Monkey, and she manages to escape, as does Monkey. And she decides to use this guy as a tool, a weapon, to help her get through this very dangerous land and get herself home.
Monkey is a wild man, self-sufficient, standalone individual.
It's kind of like Tarzan having a really bad day.
Essentially, he doesn't need anybody.
He's very dismissive of culture and looking after people because he's been hurt by it time and time again.
Trip is the complete opposite to Monkey. She's always lived within a community of peaceful people.
She's the brains of the couple, really.
I mean, if you put yourself in Monkey's shoes, how would you feel if you were minding your own business, suddenly someone made you a slave, and then told you to do something you didn't want to do?
She can choose whether he lives or whether he dies.
How do I know you're coming back?
You die, I die, right?
Yeah.
The performance capture with Andy Serkis is always a really great experience.
Andy co-directed the performance capture, and I think Andy is undoubtedly one of the best character actors we have in the UK, or anywhere.
He has a very particular way of warming everyone up.
One of Andy's key skills is being able to actually make them relax and understand how it's not that different to a film production.
The first morning when we got together, he said, right, everyone outside into the large area. And we ended up kind of running around for quite a few minutes playing tag, going under people's legs to free us up, and he's sprinting. And
with 20 adults running around trying to do this all at once, it's very hectic, and the energy is just there.
Alex Garland is a novelist and screenplay writer, and he's responsible for The Beach, 28 Days Later, Sunshine.
I don't want to say the right thing about him because he's brilliant.
Because we wanted the game to feel like a movie when you're playing it, we thought we've got to find a really great screenwriter. So when Alex came on board, it gave us an opportunity to work with someone who's a master of his craft in an area that we don't actually know a lot about. And so what he brought to the game was this amazing kind of almost directorial eye of how to tell a story. And he worked with us for 2 years on that, and we learned a hell of a lot from him.
At a very high level, Enslaved was inspired by the Chinese story of A Journey to the West. But if we move below that, Enslaved is inspired by Ninja Theory's desire to make beautiful games, to create believable characters in beautiful settings, and give them really exciting situations to deal with. Teamwork is very important in Enslaved. What we didn't want to do is end up with a game that was an escort mission for the entirety of it.
Teamwork is crucial to the game because there are situations that you encounter where perhaps Monkey could traverse it but Trip couldn't, or vice versa. And so you need to work out how to get through the environment without killing Trip, because that'll kill you.
So it's very important that the two characters work together to overcome the obstacles. And each of them brings a unique talent or ability to help solve the problems.
Monkey is able to pick Trip up and literally throw her up to higher levels where she can then go and access the door or drop something down for Monkey to then climb up.
Monkey is very much a fighter. He's more about just attacking and protecting Trip, which is his main mission. And Trip is there to be protected, but also she's got technical abilities that are way beyond Monkey.
She can identify faults in some of the robots that Monkey encounters. And if Monkey uses that fault, he can, say, rip off one of the arms of the scouts and turn that scout into a walking bomb, which he then throws into a number of other robots and causes massive destruction.
Monkey does the fighting, the clambering, the kind of violent action, and Trip does the reprogramming of technology, doing strategic reconnaissance, and basically together they work as a team.
A lot of the puzzles are not completely obvious. They're kind of like buried within the apocalyptic environment, and through explorations they start to understand what strengths each character has in order to enable them to overcome the puzzles.
It's a puzzle you can believe. You know, it's not some strange thing. I think that's going to make it a lot more memorable, because you're going to actually go, you know, it's almost, you don't realise it's a puzzle until you're halfway through it and you understand, okay, I've now got to do this, and I've got to do this, and it comes together. So in this world, the war ended about 50 or so years ago. There are mechs still around that will activate it if you trip them. These are mechs that have been left over from wars long ago, where they pretty much destroyed all of humanity. And this is analogous to landmines, like in places like Cambodia and so forth. So they're still killing thousands of people, even though the war was over decades ago. As soon as they detect any kind of human presence, they're going to reactivate and go through their old programming, which is literally to kill. There's a range of different enemies. I think probably my favourite enemy is the dog. And we say dog, it's not small, it's huge and very frightening, and it's a hunter-killer.
The mechs will begin to learn if you start using the same attack patterns over and over. The mechs will adapt to that. They will start blocking more if you're attacking in a certain way. So you need to explore the different combos that Monkey has. We have to use the environment to maneuver yourself around. It's a tactical gameplay. There's certain types of mechs that have a weakness that Monkey can exploit, and if he's able to manipulate the combat in such a way to take on that mech, he can then actually change the battlefield quite dramatically in an instant.
One or two they can handle fairly comfortably, but as soon as you add in different types of enemies, like combinations of enemies or greater numbers of enemies, the player is really up against the wall here.
One can't actually get through this journey without the other.
We started with the idea that we wanted to set it in the future, but in a beautiful future. We took the idea of magic and turned it into technology, so we grounded it in a reality that we could foresee.
Enslaved's world is a world that, on one hand, is incredibly ugly. It's destroyed, it's full of old relics.
It's kind of post-apocalyptic.
Nature has retaken the planet, so where there was man-made structures, buildings, roads, cities, nature has now overcome.
What would it take for the world to end and become like that? So we did a timeline from now to about 150, 200 years, and mark the different events that would need to happen to get to that point.
You know, it's after the machine wars have happened, it's after swine flu has killed us all, it's after all commerce has collapsed, and people have effectively become irrelevant.
But on the other hand, it's also a place that's incredibly beautiful to look at.
Usually when you see an apocalyptic world, it's grey and brown and desolate.
What we don't like usually is monochromatic games.
People have a tendency to think that if humanity dies, then the world dies with them, and it's totally the opposite that's true. When we're off the face of the earth, nature just reclaims everything. And it's amazing how quickly you see things that we felt were permanent start to dilapidate.
We much prefer to, through colors, show emotion, show colorful environment, epic views.
Larger than life, you know, everything's richer than you imagine. You know, if we're going to add atmospherics or lens flares to the game, or fog, or transmit kind of lighting through leaves and through skin, let's look at how we can actually do that physically correct, and then let's ramp that up, because that's the style we're trying to go for. You know, it's believable, but it's richer and larger than life.
You can see places like where something horrific has happened, like Chernobyl, and where nature has retaken it. It's beautiful in amongst the destruction and desolation, and that was the feeling that we really wanted to capture.
The game starts in New York, and the reason it starts in New York's a universal city. Everyone recognizes it, so when you start there, you're basically saying this is Earth.
But as they leave New York City and start heading further towards the west, towards their ultimate goal, they pass through vestiges of history. So there is one large area where hundreds of titans, large mechs, taller than buildings, fought together, smashed each other to bits, and created this kind of desolate landscape of oil spills and chemicals all merged together amongst this twisted metal.
When you go through later levels, you know, things start to get even more kind of grander and a bit more fantasy.
It'll at least be remembered when you play it. Like, there'll be imagery, there'll be sounds, there'll be an experience about it that then becomes part of you. That's how you kind of immortalize your games. And that's what we're trying to achieve. Make a game that we would want to watch, play, touch, hear, see. That's our objective.
Ninja Theory is a very ambitious company, it's very passionate.
I think what inspires the team is a fundamental desire to create things that are memorable, and that pervades every discipline, art, animation. Like, we strive to be amongst the best in every area.
We strive to make beautiful things, and we're inspired by beauty, and we want to bring that into the worlds that we create.
All these kind of influences from books and TV as well, you know. Anything that really creates a certain ambience.
Fundamentally, everybody in the company loves games, they love films. But there's a bit of a bent towards Eastern films. In particular, we would always have Friday afternoon sessions where the whole team would sit down and watch the latest martial arts movie that's come over from Hong Kong.
So the artists, they're inspired by, you know, great visuals, great color, lighting, movement. The coding team is inspired by helping the other artistic teams achieve what they want to do, but also to set new benchmarks for technology.
As a designer, we want to improve our designs to support all the animations, all the audio, all the art, and everyone just keeps pushing each other higher and higher and higher.
To inspire each other, we're really playing each other's levels that we've created, having a look at what the artists have just been doing lately, walking around and seeing what the animators just create this awesome sequence. Really, it's just about seeing the talent that's on show from everyone else in the studio, and that really inspires everyone else to just push harder and make their stuff as good as everyone else's.
Keep blasting those leeches up there!
Yeah, so a strange thing happened while we were developing Enslaved. A lot of the team members started getting into fitness, into weight training. It became a bit of an obsession, so the whole image of geekdom you get in developers isn't true at Ninja Theory.
Drinking their protein shakes, or I like to call them beefcakes, adding their little bit of powder in.
A few more people going to the gym. At lunchtime it's the gun show, so you know, monkeys kind of helped us in different ways.
At the start of the game, we have such a good canvas to work on, but we were trying to do something that not many people had seen before. You
can get this kind of balance and mix and variety between action and puzzle solving and strategic elements, and instead of it just being a pure mindless action game, it now becomes cerebral. 10, 15 years ago, the games were a bit more challenging in that way. And I think games have actually got easier and easier and easier. You know, you have to think strategically about the situations you're coming across.
For example, there's a huge crane that you intend to use a bridge to get across the other side, to get the trip across this huge ravine. Monkey has to climb up a building, then literally leap across. Of course, it never goes easy, so the crane starts collapsing and he has to climb up this thing as this whole thing is collapsing around him. So we've really tried to create that very dynamic and exciting puzzles rather than something very flat and static.
It's amazing to see areas that are so different, and going through kind of like alleyways or going through buildings and little offices, suddenly they feel more like caves. You know, you're expecting animals to be running out from everywhere, and then, you know, obviously throw the robots into play and some large structures of big mega kind of mechs that were once kind of roaming the land, and you know, you've got a really good kind of combination of things to work with.
I think one of the most dramatic pieces is one of the dogs has been tracking you all through New York, and it's really pretty much caught up with you. It's so close, and you can kind of feel it coming after you, and you and Trip are running for your life, and it's pure panic.
When you put all your scenes and you've built your levels and you put it all together and you've got it working for the first time, that's the beginning of your development, not the end. Traditionally in games, you get everything working, it's all working together, and then it's like, oh, let's stick it in a box. And in movies, it's the opposite. You do the first cut, and then you've got this long, arduous journey of refinement, refinement, refinement. Every aspect, cameras, lighting, sounds, the tone of the story, the pitch of the characters, that continues. And we did that several times over on Enslaved. And that's something I've not really experienced in game development before, and it's quite a painful process, but now it's part of our model. That's how you create cohesive experiences.
Amongst all the ideas we have for DLC, exploring more of Pigsy's character, finding out a little bit more about him, where he came from, the sorts of things that he does, was just too tantalising. We had to go for it. So Enslaved's DLC focuses on a tertiary character called Pigsy.
Pigsy is a fascinating character because he's not a typical hero. He's not always successful in what he does, but he keeps trying, and that's where his real strength is.
You meet Pigsy in the main game. He has a relationship with Trip. They've known each other for a long time, and Trip believes that Pigsy can help, and so they journey to find him.
Pigsy is pretty much in love with Trip, but she doesn't feel the same way. As far as she's concerned, they're just good friends.
But he has an appreciation for all things beautiful, especially women, and he has found a book of pin-up women that he has then, you know, decorated his pad with, he's decorated his guns with himself, you know, he has great tattoos of beautiful women on his arms. Pigsy lives in the Titan Graveyard, which is an area where hundreds of mechs fought a massive war. It's basically the war that ended the dominance of the mechs. They wiped each other out. Pigsy's motivation is to build himself a friend. Essentially, he's very lonely. He's very dissatisfied with his life. He feels that it's the same monotony day after day after day, and he really needs someone to share this with. He goes off to find all the parts he needs to build a robot friend, someone he affectionately calls Perfect 10.
There's a full set of mechanics that we had to create to suit Pigsy.
This looks like a good spot.
Like, say, his hookshot. You can swing across the environment and grapple to different points around in the environment, and move a lot faster and higher than Monkey ever did.
So Pigsy has a sniper rifle, which he affectionately calls Lola, that he uses to keep the mechs off of his property.
Pigsy can also sneak past enemies and dive into cover. This allows him to analyze the environment and analyze the enemies before taking action.
What could possibly go wrong?
There are a lot of things that people won't fully understand about Pigsy when they first see him in the main game. But there are events here that will later resonate in the main game, which I think is really, really interesting. So in a way, it does add depth not only to Pigsy, but also to the main game as well.